Should you be able to hang clean more than you clean? How do you stop failing snatches behind? And when should you wear a belt in your training? In episode 14 of the Last Set Best Set podcast, Coach Calvin and I dive deep answering these questions and more. And if you want your question answered on next week's episode, then make sure to check out the link in the description below. Welcome back to the Last Set Best Set podcast. I'm Coach Brian. I'm the owner of Big Ben Strength, and I've been teaching Olympic lifting for the last 11 years now.
And I am Coach Calvin. I am current captain of Lindenwood University's Olympic weightlifting program, as well as a coach through Big Ben Strength.
And today, guys, we're going to be answering some questions that you guys submitted to us, starting with question number one, which comes from Anonymous, who asks, I clean more from the hang than from the floor. How do I fix this? So this is pretty common, especially with lifters who come from different backgrounds, like a CrossFit background, football players, or other track and field athletes who use hangs in their training. This is pretty common for those who have that background and then switch into doing competitive weightlifting. It's pretty normal for them to be able to do more from the hang than from the floor, and that's just because that you have done a lot of those reps and a lot more than you have from the floor. So it's not necessarily a bad thing that you can do that for now, but over time we want to try and close that gap, because at the end of the day we compete in the clean and jerk from the floor, so we need to be good at that. We would want to be the best at that and not from the hang. There's a couple reasons that this could that technically why this might be the case. So the first one is if you're not practicing your pulls from the floor, that's got to be an absolute necessity. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I will say, like, a lot of high-level weightlifters, they actually can do sometimes more from the hang than they can from the floor. Especially like a little more elastic or like explosive lifters, like using that stretch reflex can definitely give you an advantage. Mm-hmm. But most people probably should be working on those floor positions, especially if you have transitioned to weightlifting. If you're in a team sport, if you're in football, if you're doing track and field, or if you're a CrossFitter, you just got to consider the demands of your sport and then how that directly relates to them. Obviously, CrossFit, you're going to have to be doing snatches and cleans from the floor, not just from the hang for some of those workouts, some of those competitions. So it would probably benefit you to close that gap of the hang and the full movement. For instance, if you can only do 185 pounds from the floor but 225 pounds from the hang, you got a real problem there.
Yeah.
Even those high-level weightlifters I'm talking about that can do maybe more from the hang, maybe it's 5 kilos more, maybe it's like 10 pounds more. It's usually not a crazy difference anyways, and it's not the same for every lifter as well. So definitely, like, make sure you're pulling from the floor, like doing a clean variation from the floor at least twice a week. That's like my thing there. I think if you're only doing it once a week, it's probably not enough opportunity to practice. And you could even do 3 times a week, depending on how you are organizing your programming. Other than that, I think like you just got to diagnose the problem. You got to figure out what's actually going on, what's going wrong from the floor, from my start position to that transition around the knee. That's causing inefficiency. So even in those high-level weightlifters that I'm talking about that might hang clean more, everybody's still going to have something that breaks down probably off the floor because it's a weaker position for most people than above the knee. So it's a lot easier to lose position when you're coming off the floor and you're below the knee. So what are some common issues you think that happen, Brian, like off the floor in that start position that lead to loss of weight on your PRs?
I've written a lot of programs over the last 11 years as a weightlifting coach, and the biggest mistake that I see weightlifters make is not getting their reps in. At the end of the day, weightlifting is half strength and half skill, and the only way to get skilled at the snatch and clean and jerk is to get your reps in. Now, everyone knows volume isn't fun. Triples on the clean and jerk are about as fun as a funeral. But if you want to get good at this sport, it's not about doing what's fun, it's about doing what works. That's why I call my newest program Welcome to Hell. The Welcome to Hell program is designed for lifters who are willing to do whatever it takes to get better. This isn't the program you want to do, this is the program you need to do. So if you want to get good, then check out the program at the link in the description below and use code LASTSETPOD at checkout to save 20% on the program. All right, back to the show. So usually it's going to be either just an incorrect start position for you, so either hips too low or too high, and not being able to really push into the floor very well, or having some sort of issue where the in the pull you're kind of moving forward off the floor and going around the knee. That would be where you start to see some issues technically. Another big one that can happen for a lot of people who do more from the hang is specifically that area passing the knee. And so sometimes a lot of lifters will kind of shift their balance from midfoot as they're pulling to way too far back on the heels, usually in an effort to try and get their knees out of the way of the bar. But by overdoing it, you're shifting your balance a lot, and it can cause a compensation later on in your technique, either bumping the bar forward or having some sort of other issue like that. So those would be the two big ones. What are some other things that you see there?
Yeah, that's the main ones that I see. There's obviously going to be a variety of issues with foot pressure. This is a big thing, especially when it comes to more inexperienced, like people that do the movements but aren't like super proficient in them, like CrossFitters, like football players. Usually, there's something crazy going on with your foot pressure. You're shifting all the way back to the heels as you round the knee.
Yeah, just generally like almost just usually too much movement in general. And it doesn't look very smooth. It looks really erratic, and I think a lot of the time it might come from trying to move too quickly. That's another thing that could be causing you some issues off the floor. It'd be trying to pull the bar, yank the bar off the floor as quick as possible, and then having some issue with slowing down as you pass the knee. And when you're doing the hang, usually you're used to starting to go very fast when you go past the knee. But if you rush that start position, you get slower as you pass the knee, then you're not really leaning into your strengths either. So that would be something else to think about. Is there anything else that you want to cover as far as hangs from the floor? Do everybody feel like they have a good idea of like what to do if that is the issue?
Yeah, I think we covered that pretty solid. Other than that, just reach out to a coach, because as a beginner weightlifter, you probably don't even know what's going on there.
Yeah, for sure. And if you don't have a coach, you guys can check out our Discord, linked in the description below. You can upload videos in there. We'll give you free video feedback and answer any questions that you guys have. So let's go ahead. Question number 2 comes from Anon, who asks, how do I stop failing snatches behind? This is a great question, because if you're somebody who fails snatches behind, it's pretty frustrating, especially because most of the time you're going to get a joking advice from somebody that says, like, put some more weight on. And yes, maybe that is the case, but more than likely we've got some technique issues here that we need to address. So if you're failing snatches behind, most of the time it's due to some sort of bar path issue. And typically a lot of the time it's lifters who bump the bar away from them when they get that bar into their hips. And then because of that bump, it loops forward and then loops back around. So instead of trying to stop the bar from just moving down, you're also trying to stop the bar from moving back and down. It's pretty hard to do, especially if you put a lot of momentum into it. So that is usually a big reason for failing snatches behind. What are some things that people can do if they want to try and work on that?
Some drills that are really helpful when someone has like a lot of bar displacement, horizontal displacement. So the bar is moving very far forward, very far back, like we talked about there. Really good is no feet variations. So no feet snatches are great. And these will really force you to like see your problem when it happens and feel that problem. If you swing the bar way out and you can't, for instance, maybe jump forward to catch it, you're gonna just fail. You're just gonna fail the lift. If you're not gonna be able to make it if your feet stay in the same spot. So the same thing goes for this bar looping around way far. It's just gonna show that problem a lot more apparent, like, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. The no feet snatch is a really great way to work on this. For anybody who doesn't know, no feet snatch means it is a snatch in which your feet do not leave the ground at the top of the pull as they normally would. So usually when you do these, you'll set up with your feet a little bit wider in your actual receiving position rather than trying to just keep them planted in their pulling position. And you can come up under the heels a little bit, but we can't fully leave the floor. And this is really going to force you to kind of assess your balance and make some micro adjustments to your technique because of that. Another good drill that you guys can try, this one is something you can't go quite as heavy on, so it has a little bit less value there, but it could be a great movement primer or warm-up, is no contact snatches. I actually am a really big fan of these. I kind of thought that they were not, I didn't love them when I first got into it, but I've spent a lot of time working on them over the last year and found that they really are great for lifters who do all kinds of wacky things in their pull that lead to either a big jump back or missing snatches behind. So you can kind of tighten up your bar path a little bit with the no contact snatch where the bar doesn't make any contact with your legs or hips on the way up. And then as you go to add back in some contact as the weight gets a little bit progressively heavier, you're doing way less forward movement of the hips into the bar, and usually your bar path is a lot straighter and the movement looks a lot crisper. So I would definitely give those a try for sure. And then I would say one other thing, usually this is not the case, but for lifters who do have pretty good technique and aren't having any sort of bar path issues, is you might want to assess whether chest strength is an issue. This is something that I've done with a couple athletes in the past who would just repeatedly miss snatches behind. Is incorporating more chest work, dumbbell bench, chest flies, things like that. And the chest is actually really good at stopping the bar from moving back excessively. And if it does, you usually need to be strong enough to support it. So I would recommend incorporating some chest work into your training as well if your technique is pretty solid. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so we use bench press in our programming every now and then, and bench press like really serves a good purpose for one, athletes that need to gain weight, because it's a compound movement, simulates a lot of muscle mass, um, and it'll help you put on muscle, training in a new range of motion there. So other than that, there's another great purpose, and it's for athletes that are kind of unstable or not super strong overhead.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we're talking about here. If perhaps this issue's more about your overhead position and how stable you are at keeping it forward backwards, um, definitely just training more muscles attached to, yeah, your shoulder complex there, is a good idea, including more accessory work, not just for that pushing motion, but also for your back, also other shoulder exercise variations that you can do there.
Yeah.
That's all going to be a good idea as well. Like my coach always tells this story about how Fernando Reese, who got fourth place, I believe, at the Rio Olympics, he used to train here at Lindenwood. He was a student as well. Imagine that 400 something pound guy in your chemistry class. But
Just in the front, obstructing everybody's view.
he he used to bench press to try and create a better rack position or a better shelf, to hold the bar on there, was kind of his aim for it. So that's another interesting application. I'm not sure if I would use that one because most people, I think, if they can't get their arms
Yeah.
in the
Most
rack,
people stop benching for exactly that reason. That's kind of
yeah.
interesting.
So that's interesting. But um, yeah, those are my main thoughts on like using bench press for increasing overhead stability. I think it's a decent idea and something worth trying.
Yeah, for sure. I had an athlete recently who was just having a lot of issues with missing snatches behind, and I checked in. And I was like, "Hey, are you doing your dumbbell bench like your accessories for chest?" He's like, "Well, I haven't really been like making time for it." And I was like, "Well, like I put them in there so that you will stop missing behind." So he started incorporating it, and he said it was like 3 weeks after that he has not missed a single snatch behind. Anecdotally, who knows whether the dumbbell bench actually made that big of a difference in the lifts or not, but something to consider for sure. All right, let's go ahead and get into question number 3, which comes from anonymous, but also from pretty much every weightlifter I've ever coached, which is when should I wear a belt? So, a lot of lifters have this worry, especially beginners, have this worry about relying on the belt too much, or that it's going to be some sort of a crutch for their training. And I just want to like say, I don't think that that is nearly anything something you should be worried about. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of like, and I don't know if it's like Instagram, maybe fear mongering kind of thing, where like you see a reel that's like, don't use a belt, you're never gonna learn to brace, your core is weak or something. And that's just kind of like easier to sell kind of rhetoric than just saying, no, you're fine. Like,
Right.
um,
Yeah, it's like the it's like the really frustrating like organic lifter thing that has gotten real popular on Instagram where they're just like you should lift exclusively bare feet, only wearing jorts probably, and just do just do raw lifting, nothing, no assistance whatsoever. Weightlifters stop taking inspiration from these people. They're not weightlifters. They're also most of the time not that strong,
yeah, except for Clarence Kennedy.
except for Clarence Kennedy. Clarence, you ruined the point that I'm trying to make. All right.
Although I would say, and I think Clarence might even admit this himself too, that he could be possibly stronger using a belt, using knee sleeves. He kind of just says he takes like a funny approach to it, where from what I remember, he's like, "Oh, I just don't want to hassle with putting on more equipment. It's just like a
Right.
hassle for me, and I'm not competing, so who cares?"
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And for him, I think he said also that it's just like he wants to see what he can do without it. And I'm like, okay, I mean that's a totally valid, legit reason. Like if you're training with that focus in mind and not with the focus of being the best possible weightlifter you could be, I go for it. But I'd be careful with just like worrying about it too much. So let's talk about the belt and like what its purpose is. So the belt is not supposed to be something that is supporting your back, especially if you see those like old school lifting belts with the like thin buckle in front and then the big like patch on the back side of it. It's not a back supporting tool, and that's not the reason that you should use it. The biggest reason for it is that it's going to help you brace, and it's going to help you use more of your core to brace so that you can lift more weight. Um, it's also, I find it a great tool for learning how to brace for beginner lifters. So it's really simple. You put the belt on, you should tighten it pretty tight, but not as tight as you can possibly get it. Then you take a big deep breath in and push your stomach out into the belt forward and all the way around your core. So not just the stomach, but everything around the midsection. And that is how you brace fundamentally for squats, pulls, Olympic lifts, same thing. So the belt is because it's getting you to brace with more muscle than you would be able to normally brace without it. It's going to help you lift more weights, and that is going to help you get stronger. So you're not actually getting weaker by using a belt. You would actually be getting stronger by using a belt. And I just a lot of people don't seem to follow that logic, or don't seem to take that all the way down to what actually makes sense. But yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I do think like if there's something that allows you to hit heavier weight more often, that is going to be what makes you better over the long term. Like think about like taking creatine will let you get more reps in, um, whether that's in like a bodybuilding sense, like you're doing a set of 10 on cable curls, or it's a you know set of squats that's heavy, or it's a jerk after a clean that was really hard. Either way, you're getting more practice in at those high sort of at the high intensity zones, at the high quality zones, which is just going to make you a better weightlifter. So if wearing a belt helps you get more practice in near those heavier weights, it will make you a better weightlifter over time. So it's not something to be avoided just because you're more hardcore. I mean, does using weightlifting shoes, take
Make
away.
you less hardcore?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's funny that everybody's like, okay, yeah, weightlifting shoes are fine, but even then now, it's like, oh, you need the wide toe box. Oh, you need like squat barefoot sometimes or something like that. Like people like to overcomplicate it a little bit. Um,
People like to
where,
spend more time thinking about this than actually training. It's ridiculous.
yeah. So, I mean, I don't think it's like something you need to think about a whole ton. If you feel like adding a belt helps you on that set, then you should add it in. If you feel like you need a belt to do your first warm up set, yeah, that's probably a problem.
Yeah. Yeah, especially like some I've heard this like arbitrary rule thrown around that like you shouldn't put a belt on until after 80%. It just feels like a made up number that somebody picked one day and then it caught fire, but like that's just made up. It's not a rule that you have to follow. Feel free to put a belt on before then if you want. But if you have to wear a belt for an empty bar like that, maybe is something you should maybe work on a little bit. So some practical stuff for weightlifters out there. One is I would assess whether or not you like them for snatches. That is the most contentious part. Some people love them, some people don't. I don't like them for the snatch. I feel like it's easier for me to accidentally hit the belt on the way up with it. So I don't wear them for snatch. One of my lifters does. Most of the rest of them don't. Um, Pretty much every one of us, we all use it for clean and jerks, pulls, squats, front squats, anything that we're trying to do that requires a lot of stability from the core, especially if we're doing like overhead, like heavy overhead carries or something like that. That may be another reason that we use it. But yeah, what about the rest of you guys?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I even have much more to offer on that. Like,
Cool.
it's not a huge like topic of concern for me. Like, it's not never something I've tried on snatches. Like, I think sometimes when you see lifters using a belt, they tend to be this super efficient lifter that has maybe really weak legs. Um, so just even having that extra 1% of power you might get from the belt will result in differences in their lifts.
Yeah.
That's kind of like that's a very small section of people though, and I've
Yeah.
had some of my athletes maybe have tried it like Nick, who just competed this past weekend, tried it for a few sessions. Didn't feel like it was really adding anything.
Yeah.
So it's something you could try if you think it really would really help. I know my teammate Cameron in the last like 5 or 6 months added a belt to his snatches, and he likes it. So it's
Yeah.
about if you like it or not.
Yeah. Experiment around with it for sure. One of the most frustrating parts about weightlifting is balancing the focus between strength and technique. Here's the thing, you can have the best technique in the world, but if you can't squat 225 or 315, you'll never be able to clean and jerk it because you're simply not strong enough. That's why I created my new program, The Classic. The Classic is a 16-week squat-focused Olympic weightlifting program designed to first set PRs in the back squat, front squat, pull, and press before taking this new strength and turning it into PRs in the snatch and clean and jerk. It's the most tested program I have, with hundreds of lifters having tested it out over the last 3 years. And as a thank you to our podcast listeners, you can save 20% on the program by using the code LASTSETPOD at checkout at the link in the description below. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and move into rapid fire questions now. Question number 4 comes from Shayla04, who asks, how long does it take you to recover from a meet? Calvin, how long does it take you to recover from a meet?
Well, I think it kind of does depend. Like, you got to define maybe is this like a train through meet? Is this like a meet that we really took a deload for and, there's maybe a lot of pressure to do well at this meet? Like, so for instance, a train through meet would be one where there probably isn't much of a deload. You're not even really peaking for this meet. It's just through normal training, you're doing it for fun. It's maybe a local meet. Versus when I went to AO finals recently, we did a full deload. There was a lot of pressure to do well there, and there was a peaking program into that as well. That leads to a lot more fatigue, especially on the mental side, psychological side, um, as well as, of course, physical too. But I wanted to touch a little more on that psychological side because all that effort that you're putting into doing well in that meet day in and day out for probably months before it kind of all culminates into that one day when you have to be all on top of your stuff for the few days before that, checking weight, maybe you're cutting weight. Um, and it's really needed to take some time off, and you're going to feel the effects of that post meet letdown after this big meet. If you're taking 2 or 3 weeks off a year, I think that's totally fine. especially if you're training hard and competing year round, and also very especially if you have a life outside of weightlifting, which is
Yeah.
pretty much everybody. So yeah, that's kind of my general thoughts. There's plenty of physical little issues that you probably need to heal up after a big meet as well. If you're dealing with
Hmm.
injury, you should take a little bit of time off at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, my last meet was the first one that I'd done in a couple of years, and and I was fully not prepared for like difference in recovering at like 28 versus like 22 or 23. I remember driving home and just like feeling okay, and my knees start aching a little bit, and then I go to like roll the window down and put my arm out, and I'm like, oh, I can't move my whole arm. Like it was just, I was like, oh, this is different. Okay, got it. So I just take time off after a meet. Maybe I'll go into the gym and do some like buys and tries or something like that, but that's about it. I don't spend a whole lot of time like in the gym after a meet. I think it's good to take 1 or 2 weeks off, depending on the intensity of the meet. Maybe even up to a month off um, after if it's a really big meet that you've kind of put a lot of time into like all year working towards. So yeah, definitely do that. Don't be afraid to take time off for sure. So question number 5, our top 3 favorite Team USA lifters to watch. Who are our top 3 favorite Team USA lifters to watch? Um, I mean, obviously, it's hard to rank all these, and you just put a name down that I didn't even think about, and now I'm like, God dang it, that's a much better answer right there. I'm going to go ahead and say my number 3. These are not in any order, honestly. Um, my number 3 favorite lifter to watch is Mary Tyson Lappin. I think it's really cool to see her putting up some crazy numbers. Like she just did like a 160 clean and jerk complex or something like that recently. It's just nuts, especially with like how little time she's got in the sport. Transitioning from throws is pretty incredible. What about you?
Yeah, Mary's pretty cool. Like I like to see a lot of these high level athletes that have come from other sports. Of course, the most successful of which usually start very young and are not from other sports, most
Hmm.
likely. But I couldn't do this list without saying Hampton. Uh, I was just out there a week and a half ago training with him a little bit, and it's definitely more valuable. Like once you've like sort of lived that life with him, like I was staying at his house with him, like really understanding the attention to detail and what goes into making him so good. It kind of adds like a lot more respect to how I view his lifting and his success and performance and stuff. It's quite impressive. So he's definitely on my top 3. What about your next one?
Yeah, same. Actually, Hampton was my next one. Specifically, right now, I think he looks dialed in. Like he looks stronger than he's ever been. It seems like he just hit like a 500 something squat for a set of 3, which is ridiculous. And then it seems like he's been snatching in the high 20s weekly. Um, uh, and I think he's hit 130 a couple times in the past couple of weeks, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
Yeah, it looks like he hit 130 yesterday, and he did last week when I was with him too. So
Dang,
um,
man. Which is heavier than he was hitting at the Olympics. It's insane.
when
Like he's
when I was staying with him, he did a clean and jerk double, so clean jerk with 173 kilos. Like insane. Like that's
what?
three kilos under his world record. And actually, there was a bet going on. I literally bet him that he couldn't do it.
You
So
bet against that man, and he said, "Nope, I've got this."
well, he also had told me that he had tried that exact weight like 6 or 7 times and not made it. And actually, I remember him trying it the last time I stayed with him, and he very closely missed the second jerk. It was like going down into a lunge.
Oh wow.
And actually, that was while the CEO of USA Weightlifting and the head coach of Team USA were in for a day or two watching. And it was like it wasn't like a scary jerk, but it was kind of like it was a little questionable. It was like, "Are you okay?"
Yeah,
So that was it was a lot more convincing this time around than the last time I saw him try it. But yeah, that's a huge weight.
that's awesome. I'm so excited to see what he puts up over the next quad. I think it's going to be incredible. So who is your number two lifter over here?
So my next lifter on my list is a guy I'm kind of buddies with is Preston Powell.
Yeah,
I like
Preston's a stud.
I like him because he's sort of in a way the opposite of Hampton, but still pretty successful. Like I think he's still pretty dialed on a lot of his details and stuff, but he definitely seems like a little more maybe like militaristic about his training. Like he's just kind of does what he's told
Hmm.
and doesn't really think much like harder about it.
Yeah,
Like he's sort of the meathead weightlifter. Like he's just like loves slamming heavy weights and just like gets like real riled up and screams and stuff. And
and and he's got just godlike genetics. Because have you met his dad?
yeah, I actually did at Pittsburgh Nationals. We talked to him for a little bit.
Dude, his dad is genuinely just Superman, and so that is who we've got in the 81s, like trying to really crush it in this next quad. Preston's going to be incredible, and he's working with Power and Grace, right?
Hmm.
Yeah. So I expect that we're going to see some pretty big things from him, and he's been crushing it for since like 2021 is when I first met him because we had somebody on the team on Team USA that year, and he was in the same weight class, and it just like it, Preston's going to do really well. He's pretty great. Go check him out, you guys. Who is your that was your number two. So
Yeah.
my number one lifter is Olivia Reeves. I mean, gold medal at the Olympics, first time in since before she was born, which is crazy to think about. And she's also just hitting lifts that are insane, just insane. Like just I remember getting started, like really starting to pay attention to what people were putting up at a high national and like international level, and it was pretty rare that we would see like pretty much anybody clean and jerking over 120, and it'd be kind of rare if we saw any of the women like snatching over 100. Um, and there were a few that could do it, but now it's like those numbers are just pushed. Like she's like snatching 120 and clean and jerking 140, 150. It is insane. She's probably my favorite lifter to watch, and she's really nice. Just seems like she really just enjoys the sport, and she's just now starting to train like more than 3 times a week, which is crazy. So I think we're going to see better and better things from her over the next several quads, hopefully.
Oh yeah. The next person on my list is Erin Williams. So obviously I love watching Olivia too. Um, but since you had her on yours already, I didn't want to make my list like too similar to yours. And I figured I'd throw in Aaron because he's only been training for a handful of years now, 3 or 4 years, I believe. And he is just like brute strength, like the strongest guy you've ever seen. Like it's crazy. I think Dylan Cooper just did a video with him recently.
Yeah, I was watching that recently.
There was a funny edit he made out of it where he was just asking him like questions about weight, like oh, what's your warm up attempts? And he's like 70 kilos, 120 kilos, 140 kilos for snatch. Like this dude doesn't even use plates below a red until he's at above 300 pounds. It's like
That's
crazy.
insane. Or did you see him just strict press 120?
Yeah.
Just just looked effortless, and I think he said in there that he'd strict press 150 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was something crazy. It was like 157 or some number like that maybe.
But he's not just crushing strength lifts either. Like he has his jerks especially is like from the rack are insane. I think he's done 237 from the rack, maybe more. But he's putting up just crazy numbers. I think he's front squatted 260 to maybe 270. Um,
Yeah, I think in the 270s or even 280. I've seen
yeah,
him do some like crazy back squats with like 300 plus. Like so, he's a strong dude,
yeah,
especially in the shoulders. That's something that you don't see very often anymore in weightlifting. I think it was a lot more common kind of in that older era weightlifting when they had like
yeah,
the clean and press, um,
right.
which was literally just a clean and strict press, kind of done in a big cheating way where you kind of like bend your back real far to complete the press. But guys back then had monster strong shoulders. They would clean and press like 6 to 5 to 10 kilos off of their clean and jerk. Like it was
Yeah,
crazy. And so I think he's like he's kind of an example of one of those really strong shouldered lifters that you just don't see much anymore. And the big thing that comes to mind with those kind of people is just how much potential they have. If they figure out the timing of everything, if they figure out, how to time the clean and then the dip and drive of the split jerk, like they can just, the ceiling's, huge.
Yeah, I'm excited to see what he hits over the next quad because I think he's gonna be insane. So yeah, so those are our top three favorite Team USA lifters to watch, and who we want to know, like, who are your guys' favorites. So just let us know in the comments, either on the YouTube channel or if you're on Spotify, you can leave a comment down below. And it also helps boost our show to get to more people. So feel free to let us know. One thing I realized a few years ago as a burnt out weightlifter is that there's no rules for how a weightlifting program is supposed to look. You don't have to push through heavy snatches and clean and jerks on a daily basis, especially if you're just doing this for fun. That's when I made the switch to Bodybuilding, a style of training with a true 50-50 balance between Olympic lifting and bodybuilding. Not just a few sets of lazily picked accessories at the end of the workout that you're probably going to skip anyways. If you want to build muscle without losing your Olympic lifts, then check out the Bodybuilding 8-week program at the link in the description below. And save 20% at checkout when you use the discount code LASTSETPOD. All right, back to the show. And then we're going to go ahead and wrap this up with a little training update from me. So for those of you guys that don't know, Calvin has started coaching me. A couple weeks back, I decided that, coaches need coaches, and who better to do it than my podcast co-host. And so we came up with an approach that I'm pretty excited about. We broke down the whole program, which you guys can find somewhere up here. I'll link to that video if you guys want to learn how we built that. But the goal of this program is a little unique because I have a shoulder injury, so I'm not really interested in like pushing snatches or jerks right now until I have the, time to dedicate towards recovery for it. So we're just going to go ham on squats and cleans because that's what I can do. That's what I can push. So that's what I want to do. And it's been really cool. So, what were some of the things that we covered in that video, if you want to break it down as far as like technique stuff and an approach to the training?
So I think when you're considering like doing a program or starting something, like I think this video really revealed like how individual programming really is. And so even if you can find like a cookie cutter kind of normal program, like that might work well for a lot of people. But if you have the means to do it, getting a coach is like a lot more in depth and a lot more kind of beneficial for you, as opposed to just trying to shoot in the dark, finding what might be the best program. So some of the things that we, talked about were like frequency of doing the lifts, kind of how often we want to be doing the clean, if that's one of our main goals, how often we want to be doing squatting variations, that kind of thing, as well as a lot of accessory work. There was a lot of talk about kind of the specific accessories we wanted included and how we were going to use those to get the results we wanted. So I liked that video a lot, and it's a little bit longer one. I think it's about 40 minutes, but worth a watch if you have never worked with a coach and never seen kind of like what goes into making a program. Because it ended up taking quite a while to make, this kind of sort of perfect program for Brian. Even then, we're going to make little adjustments along the way. There's going to be a change. So you can never, a program's really just like the guideline. And so like already we, like Brian, your knee has kind of been bothering you with squats and stuff already.
Yeah, man. Like, so I and now I know, but I think it was because I was basing my percentages off my all-time best instead of what I could reasonably hit for a single right now, which probably is about 20 to 30 kilos difference. So yeah, so first, I guess like first week of squats, I was like, man, okay, these are a little tough, but like I felt okay. And then later that night I went to go get up off the couch and my knee was so swollen, like I couldn't straighten it. And I was like, where did that come from? And I was like looking back on the squats, I was like, I didn't really feel like those were too heavy because we're easing back into training right now. But it's important, especially for anybody who's been training for a long time, to maybe mentally separate a little bit from weights that you personally are like, that's an easy thing I could do any given day, to like, these are the weights that I need to lift right now so that I can hit what I want to later. So that's a big thing that I would keep in mind for anybody who's kind of in the similar boat. Technically, stuff that we're working on in the clean. So we decided on a 2 day a week, 2 days a week of cleans, and then 2 days a week of squats. 1 day back squat, 1 day front squat, and building up to that. And so this is my first day or first week of 4 days this week. Um, Went pretty well. As far as cleans go, technically the thing that we're focused on is my first pull, and not letting the hips rise up faster than the shoulders. And yeah, I mean, this is the same stuff that Penley told me. Like, it was probably the only technique coaching I ever got from him was about this. Because that guy was fully blind, which I didn't really realize. Like, that guy, he could just see shapes and blurs, and that was about it. But he knew that my hips are rising too fast for sure too. So we've been doing, let's see, one of the days is a complex of a clean pull plus a floating clean plus a clean. And that is really great for helping me like just get a good solid start position and push through the ground throughout the whole time and practice that. The other big thing that you've had me do is change how I set up. So I used to set up kind of pulling my hips down and pulling the slack out of the bar as I'm dropping my hips at the same time. And it was just kind of leading to inconsistent pulls. And so you have me pull the slack at the top, then drop the hips, kind of like a deadlift wedge. And that is crazy. Like, it is helping a ton, but it is kind of leading me to feel like I have no idea what to do like later in the lift. And so that's going to take some relearning for sure. But it's been fun so far. I'm really enjoying it.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad to hear it. And I think so. Yeah, next week, so not this week, but next week is going to be sort of your first like full training, like normal kind of percentages week. It's a lot of volume, so you're going to have 5x10s on stuff. So it's going to be a little intense there, but that'll be the highest volume, week we ever do. So
That'll be good, because I think, if I'm correct, I think the highest volume squat workout I've done was a 3x15, 3 sets of 15 on the squat, which is
yeah.
not the same amount of reps. So 5x10 is even more than that, which is crazy. And so I'm excited to get into it, but hopefully the legs will grow. Hopefully they'll catch up. I'm looking forward to it though. I'm thinking that I might be able to hit that 400-pound mark on the squat again by around June. What do you think?
Yeah, I think so, especially like if we can kind of, change those little mindset things, like especially with this program we're on now, it's not about what weights you're doing now. It's
Hmm.
about building the volume, building the capacity of your body
Yeah.
to handle just more training. Because
Hmm.
we're never going to get any work done. We're never going to get to that 400-pound mark on back squats
Yeah.
if you can't handle doing, you know, like 70, 75% squatting twice a week. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And that's like, real sort of more intense squatting than what we're doing right now. So we're kind of living in that lower percentage, 55, 60% zone, building up kind of those reps and the ability to handle those reps so that we can unlock that later on.
Yeah, for sure. And it's working. Like I told you, that first like higher rep squat day that I had,
Yeah.
it was kind of trippy, because I got through like my first 3 sets, and then finally after the fourth one, I was like, wait, hold on, I've got like a quad pump that's pretty real right now. Where I've never felt that just slow accumulation of quad pump. It's either like I'm going to do 1 set of 10 that is going to absolutely destroy it, and I'll have that pump from the get go,
Yeah.
or nothing, or it's just heavy, and it's just fatigue, and the accumulation of that was pretty fun. So I enjoy it for sure.
And then when it sort of builds week upon week too, um, where it's not just, oh, I'm going to do 3 weeks of tens and then I'm back to fives.
Right.
When it's like we're building in, we're doing sixes last week, eights this next week, then tens next week after that. And then we're kind of staying in tens for 3 weeks. Then we're going to eights again for another couple weeks, and we're going to sixes. Like it's really this long term, thought out approach. Enough time to like adapt to that stimulus, but not enough time to like get stagnant to it, like where you're not making progress because you've just been doing the same thing.
Yeah, for sure.
So like yeah, I'm excited to see where this goes, and especially if you can stay on top of some sleep, some eating. That's
Hmm.
definitely something we haven't touched on a ton yet because we're just focused on getting in the gym, getting stuff done.
I made it in 4 days this week, so we're
Yeah,
doing good. Yeah,
that's the main thing right now is just getting in there and yeah, doing well. Because 4 days a week, we got to see if that even works out well for the future for like long term sustainability.
for sure. Yeah. Well, it's been great, and if you guys are interested in this clean and squat program, we're potentially looking at putting that out maybe around the spring or around the summer. So, if you want a good program to blow up your squat and your clean, make sure to let us know in the comments. Calvin, where can people find you?
At Calvin Lackey 81 kg on everything, including TikTok, which I guess got banned for like 8 hours and now it's back. So I don't
Wait,
know.
it's back?
Yeah, I can use it right now. It's back. Did you not know that?
No, I like it was banned when I checked this morning, and now
Yeah,
it's
literally, it was banned when I checked this morning, and then I just have a notification on my phone right here. TikTok is back in the U.S. Discover new
this.
videos and reconnect with the community.
That's crazy. Okay, well, you guys can find me at Big Ben Strength on um, TikTok, I guess, still Instagram, YouTube, Red Note. I'm trying that out a little bit. Don't know if I'm going to really stick with that or not, but we'll see. And make sure to check out all the programs linked down in the description below. We'll catch you guys next week. Bye.